Greetings, my name is Pete Ring. My background is in military aviation and in particular fighters and choppers. I do these chats on behalf of Air Force Association New South Wales and on behalf of Wings magazine and also for our Wings Australia YouTube channel. Could I also ask that if you like our videos then please subscribe to our channel and have a look at the description on our channel for this video, and you'll find links to subscribing to our magazine called Wings and subscribing to Air Force Association New South Wales. I'd like to welcome Colin Tomlinson. Now, Cole told me just a few seconds ago he'd had a day in his life in his flying career where in one day he had two events. One was a very fortunate event and one was a very unfortunate event. So Cole, I'm going to take Cole through and he's going to tell us the story bit by bit and let this. So Cole, what was the unfortunate event?
Well, we'll start with the unfortunate event. 45 years ago.
Yeah.
The 23rd of January 1979, I managed to part company with a RAN Navy Skyhawk, A4G Skyhawk.
So
the office didn't work anymore, so I had to leave it.
You left it to its own devices.
Yeah, something like that.
It was probably a good decision at the time.
Yeah, absolutely it was.
So where were you operating the Skyhawk from? What base?
Okay, we operated off the Melbourne, HMAS Melbourne, or at Albatross at Nowra.
So you've operated off a carrier?
We did, but home base was Albatross.
Wow, I might have to do another session with you on operating off a carrier.
Interesting stuff. We had an old rust bucket of a carrier, the smallest aircraft carrier in the world.
I heard from another pilot
class, so very interesting.
I heard from another pilot who flew off to Melbourne that it was a very small piece of rust bucket when you were in the air looking at it.
Absolutely, 700 feet long, 400 feet angle deck, 180 feet pull out in the wires, and only a 90-foot stroke on the catapult. Very
small. Mate. You had to be on the ball.
Good young man sport.
You and the Skyhawk parted company. What sort of flying were you doing at the time?
Well, we left Nowra, and I'll set the scene. It was in January, and it was 8/8 cloud overcast, fairly thick low-level cloud, drizzling, and we were to do an ACM sortie with a bit of air refueling and so forth. So the tanker had left. We did a 1-minute stream takeoff to get up through the cloud, and we did a bit of area refueling, 20,000 feet and 10,000 feet, and the tanker pilot, Pete Greenfield, actually, he lost his radio, and we managed to get our air refueling side of it done, organised for him to do a no radio TACAN back to Nowra, and then we went into our ACM, the air combat manoeuvring phase of the sortie. And that's when it all got interesting.
What phase of the air combat manoeuvre were you at when it got interesting?
Well, first of all, we set up for the first split, and away we went. And as we turned back in and just started to manoeuvre the other aircraft, he was actually my boss, the CO, Errol Kavanagh, and he called the fight off. And he said he had a few chugs from the engine. And we'd gone through a couple of whiffadills, and nose high, 180 knots, slow, he got these chugs. So we went through a series of maneuvers to try and recreate it. And we worked out that it was just the drop tanks pressurization. They used to thump when the fuel finished. And we figured it was just that. But while we were going through those maneuvers, my aeroplane gave a little bit of a a bit of a cough, a little bit of a chug. And again, my tanks were doing the same because we had the same amount of fuel on and that sort of thing. So we thought, oh, good. So we split again. And as we started to come back in again, we started maneuvering. We really got into it. And I was up about 28,000 feet at about 500 knots. And bang, the whole aeroplane shuddered and started vibrating. So obviously I leveled off, started to slow down, knocked the fight off, and retarded the throttle, of course, to slow down. And each time I pushed the throttle forward, it felt like I was going down a cobblestone road. It was going bang, 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 bang down the back. Pulled the throttle off. Thought it might have been a fuel problem. Went into manual fuel. I was only getting about 80% power, and I got about 83% power out of it then. All happened very, very quickly.
And what time of the day was this?
It was about 4 to 4:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
But we were over cloud. We were 8/8 blue over the cloud, and practicing dogfighting. So the next thing, the whole sequence only took about a minute and a quarter. He was coming in, and he could see smoke coming out the back.
Wow.
And as he was coming in, and I was slowing down, he said he thought he saw a bit of flame initially. And then when he got closer, he saw a lot of flame and black chunks like coffee cups coming out the back, he said. And the only thing he said, prepare to eject, as he came in. In the meantime, I was going through the checks, and all I had time to do was to run the electric seat up under my legs, so that if I did have to eject, I didn't snap my legs off at the knees, which has happened before in the rocket motor going up. So at that point, the oil pressure light came on, which meant I had less than 20% oil. The oil pressure went to the moon, then dropped to 0. And immediately after that, the fire light came on.
So did you know at this stage what sort of country you were flying over?
Not at all. Our training area was a big area over the sea and the land.
Okay.
And we were operating over both. So I had no idea where I was in relation to within the training area.
So about now you're out of thrust.
Out of thrust, fire light on, a little bit of smoke coming through the LOX system, the liquid oxygen system, and the sudden realization that I'm in an ejection situation here, fire light on. And so I heard him say, "You're on fire, eject, eject." And he actually said it 3 times, and the radio had gone. I hit the radio to say I'm ejecting, nothing came out. And at the same time, as I reached for the face blind and pulled it down, the right rudder pedal went twang, and that was a 16-strand high tensile steel cable down to the rudders. The rest of it was all hydraulic.
Wow.
So a turbine blade or the fire had gone through the cable, and the aeroplane started to pitch up a little bit. So as I ejected, the only thing I had time to think about was, I hope like hell this thing works. And bang. And as he came in, and he was closing on me pretty quickly, it pitched up into him. So he pulled over, and he was pretty well side on. And he said, well, the cockpit area and the starboard side all burst into flame. And it flipped over. He reckoned I had about 4 seconds. So I went out past his wing.
So
all happened very quickly.
When you pulled the blind, did there seem to be much delay before the?
No delay whatsoever.
Pretty instant.
Totally instant. Yeah, and I went for the upper handle because it gave I had slowed down from about 500 knots to 260, which is about 310 true, at 13,500 feet, which is just below the barostat altitude of 14,000 feet. So I was slowing down as much as I could because of the nature of the seat. We didn't have a brilliant seat, and I can explain all that in a minute. But so the face blind soon as I got it about there, bang, I was gone. Canopy gone, and I was out in the slipstream. 1.5 seconds by the time you pull the handle to get out into the slipstream, and it was half a second to stop from 260 knots to 0. I was below the barrowstat. If I had been above 14,000 feet, I would have been a drogue chute. I would have been sitting in my seat, just coming down, slowing down, and been all nice and neat. Go through 14,000 feet. The main chute would fire. The retro rocket would fire the seat away, and it would have been all honky dory. But I was at 13,500 feet, so I got an instantaneous chute. Because we had a ballistic spreader. In the parachute, which gave the seat 0 capabilities. In other words, on the deck, pull your handle, you're up and come down in the parachute. Didn't have to go 90 knots.
Did you see anything? Did you see anything at this stage, or were you blind?
Totally blind at that point.
So at the moment you're out in suffering all these forces of this, that, and the other thing on your body, and you still got the blind down, and then the seat departed. What did you see then?
Right. Again, the almighty bang and crunch was the 23G right up the rails.
Yeah.
And the opening shock was just whack.
Yeah.
Like being on the end of a stock whip.
Yeah.
And because instantaneous shoot, slow down, I was knocked out basically probably 5 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And the helmet had rotated around the oxygen mask where I really needed it. It was down around my throat. And when I sort of came to, I was expecting to see cloud below me. What did I see? The blue sky through my feet. So I pulled the helmet back, looked up, and the helmet had hit my eye and it was starting to close up, and I'd taken a piece out of my tongue and blood was coming out. And I'm looking up at my feet. I thought, that's not right. And then whoosh, I did a big barrel roll. I sort of came back again, and about half a dozen of those. And he reported back, I've got a body in the chute.
Oh.
When I would have been out. But he said, he looks like he's doing barrel rolls.
Oh.
And it was just the slowing down of the chute, and it was just pedaling backwards and forwards. So I grabbed hold of one side, pulled it down as hard as
Now, this is when you started to get your vision back.
And that's when I was getting my vision back. But as I opened my eyes and saw my feet, I sort of looked over my shoulders, and I could see the drogue chute disappearing below me as I went through this great big whiffadell again.
Could you see the aeroplane?
No.
Never saw it again?
No, she just peeled over. After it caught on fire, it just peeled straight over and went straight down into the cloud.
Right.
And the cloud tops are about 8,000 feet. And I was at 13.5 at that point.
Well, keep going. So you felt the big opening shock and
the big bang.
And then doing
the initial ride up the rails just before the shock, it looked like I was looking through the top of my head.
Yeah.
And this grey mass spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it was just all the inner ear things going. Yeah. So, and then it was the bang, the opening shock of the chute, which dazed me, obviously, initially. And then...
So is that about when you got your brains back, in the sense of...
Right. Well, that was in the whiffadills. Coming back, I pulled down on the riser to slow it down. And he came past again, and it looks like he's all right. He's got his hands on the risers.
So what's it look like when you're sitting in a parachute and a Skyhawk goes past you?
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And because then I started to really come to, and I felt all my arms and legs, they were all working. So as he came back the next time, I gave him a thumbs up, and he reported back, oh, it looks like he's all right.
Good. You had a good, what's the word? You had a good presence of mind, by the sounds of what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I had, all the faculties back by that stage. And he disappeared.
Yeah.
Because he was going to try and get down below the cloud and see where I came out. But in the meantime, he'd been giving Mayday calls and all the important stuff. And there was a little bit of confusion initially when he gave the initial call, they thought I was out over the sea. But then they corrected all that and realised that I was 210, 52 miles from Nowra. 11 and a half minutes in the chute.
Have you stabilised at this stage?
Totally stabilised. And the first 5 minutes, adrenaline's pumping. So I knew I had a bit of blood and a bit, and arms and legs were all working all right. And the eerie quietness, it was really eerie, and it was cold, even in summer, because at that altitude, it was probably 3 degrees or 0 or something, but it felt cold.
Yeah. And
here I am just coming back, and the military chute, inherently unstable, would get an oscillate up, and it would spill the air out of the chute. So around the edges of the chute, you'd see it all ripple and it go as it was expelling the air. So I'd have to pull down and just stabilize it again, because I was, with the blood, with all that was happening, I started to feel a bit nauseous. And as I said, the first 5 minutes, adrenaline's pumping, I felt all right. But then after that, all the aches and pains started to come. I had identical bruising all the way up my body. And when I got to hospital that night, I couldn't move my head more than that for quite some time, 10 days.
Let's cover that in a minute, because I want to hear later how you got to hospital. Not quite yet.
Yep, all right. But anyway, that was the started to feel all those things 5 minutes after.
So as a matter of interest for other pilots, what clothing did you have on as far as the warmth or the lack of warm clothing?
Just a normal flying suit and G suit and Mae West and all the equipment, and that was it.
So as far as warmth goes, you would have been cold because
it was summer. It was just an Omex flying suit.
Yeah. Okay.
No jackets or anything, because it was we were flying in summer. Coming down, and I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. All I wanted to do was get down. I could see the 88's cloud below me, and I'd read just beforehand about an F4 driver who had punched out in a thunderstorm in the States, and he went up and down for 45 minutes in this bloody thunderstorm. And the hailstones were beating him around the head and all around the place, and he went up and down, and I had the feeling I'm not getting anywhere. All I want to do is get down. But anyway, it eventually happened, and I saw the cloud come up. And as it came up, I had a sudden thought. My back's really, really hurting. I got the dinghy pack behind. I didn't know whether I was going into water or into trees. I wanted to retain the dinghy pack for tree preservation, and I wanted it for the water if I was going out. But my back was really hurting, so I reached down, and to reach anything, I had to pull the risers out, get my helmet down, and it would go twang. I could see what I'm doing then. I released one side of the fittings, and the dinghy pack just hung down off the other side. So I retained it in case I was going into trees. And that gave me a little bit of relief on my back. So that's honky-dory. I'm going into the top of the clouds, and it's all lovely. Nice and warm, couldn't see a thing. And finally I'm going down. And it just felt very comforting. And then 3 minutes later, well, I had about, I don't know what it was, 3 minutes IMC, 2.5 minutes IMC, broke out, total jungle underneath, 120-foot high trees, just wall-to-wall trees. The mountains were going up into the cloud, and it was drizzling.
How high do you think about?
So
do you think you were off the ground?
I figured at that stage I was going into a valley, and I figured probably 500 feet, because I had 30 seconds to make a decision with the dinghy pack. I saw the trees coming up, and I managed to, again, boom, pull the dinghy pack up, kick it up with my legs, just click it in as I approached the top of the trees. And I had about a 8-10 knot drift over the trees. You can't steer a military chute, but I pulled down on one side and sort of came to a stop, because I saw a bit of a hole, meaning 6-8 feet round at the top of the trees. I aimed for that, but couldn't really, and smashed into the top of the trees. smash down. And I sort of got 3/4 of the way down, and I thought, God, I'm going to get stuck up in this thing. And we didn't have a tree escape kit in the Mirage gear that we had in the Mirage. We didn't have a tree escape kit, so I was thinking about that and kept crashing down to the tree. Smashed the dinghy pack open, not totally, but just broke it open. So it did do its job. It protected my backside. And a bit further down, knocked with my knee a big branch about that round, and it came smashing down, hit me on the head on the way down. Crash. And about 60 feet down, I was looking up and the chute was starting to rip. And I thought, oh no, the chute's going to rip to shreds and I'm going to fall 60 feet. But anyway, luckily it just went. The foliage broke my fall, clunk, through the tree, and I ended up in a big fern. On the top of one of those big ferns. I mean, one of those big ferns about 6 feet above the ground. And the chute was hung up about 20 feet. So I thought, oh, that's pretty fortunate. So unclicked, rolled off, left the parachute up there, of course, rolled off, and looked at where I was, and I couldn't see more than about 30 metres.
So at this stage, you're on your feet.
I was on my feet. Trees, only vision was about 30 metres because it's so thick and it was drizzling. And
cold?
It was all right. Okay. Yeah, it was. I didn't have any sense of temperature then at all.
Okay.
Because of everything else that was happening. And so I dragged the dinghy pack, unclicked it, dragged it over to a log, which was, I don't know, 10 metres away, because there was a tiny bit of a break in the trees, and I could get on this log. So I got it on, pulled the dinghy pack out to get the penetration flares and that sort of thing going. Switch on the Sabi.
What's a Sabi?
It's a search and rescue beacon and radio. Okay. So I switched it on and tried to make contact with the other aircraft, with the boss, but he was too far away and he didn't get anything. So I thought, well, the Navy choppers are going to take at least 30 to 40 minutes to get to me. Unbeknownst to me, the weather was terrible between me and Nowra. They couldn't get through. They could only come down the coast and couldn't get in. And so here I am. I thought, well, it's going to take a while for them to come. So I switched it off so that it'd save the battery. You know, you had 24 hours or whatever it was for it anyway, but I still wanted to save the battery. So I got set up on this log, undid my harness, which was a metal breastplate, unclicked it. It was a Brit, Mae West, married to an American torso harness. So it had a little D-ring and so forth on the torso harness. So I got all myself set up there, pulled out the pen gun flares just in case I needed them. And this all took probably 10 minutes. And I couldn't believe my ears.
Why?
I heard this magic sound of a Iroquois, walk, beating the hell out of the air down the valley. And it was resounding up and down the valley.
Wow.
And I thought, the Navy guys couldn't have got here that quickly. So switched on the Sabi straight away. They picked up the beacon at 4 miles, started homing in on me.
Wow.
And I fired pen gun flares up through the canopy. I think they picked up the 4th one. And
at this stage, could you see the chopper?
Couldn't see anything for trees.
Just hear the noise.
I only hear the noise.
So
and when he came in over the top and turned around, he couldn't see me, but he could see the chute. So I was able to talk to them and tell them where I was in relation to the chute. So that's all well and good. And I thought, great, I couldn't believe my luck. And I'm pretty sore at this stage, but you know, the adrenaline starts pumping again. You know, wow, I'll get out of here. And they couldn't, I think they tried you might be able to tell me later. they tried to lower the strap, and I think it got caught in the top of the trees, the strop, and pulled it back up and just sent the ball down in the hook. So by talking them into where I was, this thing came down and stopped about 2 feet above my head. Wouldn't go any further because apparently it was it was only able to go 120 feet. It was logged that it would only go 120 feet than the normal 160 feet or whatever it used to do. And it stopped. I thought, God, how am I going to get that thing? So I dumped everything, clipped up the May West again, because it was just a metal breastplate, and you just go click, and jumped, grabbed this ball, pulled myself up, got the hook, hooked it onto the D-ring, and radioed and said, I'm on. Get me the hell out of here, or some words to that effect. So anyway, up I went through the foliage, crashing my way up through the foliage, and got pulled into the chopper. There's 2 guys, and lying there, the captain looked around, and I gave him a thumbs up and a big smile, and away we went.
Whose chopper was it?
Air Force 5 Squadron helicopter.
Wow.
Funny about that.
Funny about that.
Yeah, so he took me through to the coast under the cloud. We met up with a Navy chopper on Brush Island. They transferred the doctor over to us. And then we flew up to Nara, getting lower and lower and lower as the weather got worse, heading up through St. George's Basin, nearly landed on the beach because we couldn't get through. And then we both came around St. George's Head and into Nara. And then I got taken into sick bay.
So that's how you got to the hospital.
That was my interesting day.
So
the other interesting bit.
All of a sudden, your day that turned to worms became a day of good fortune.
It was, and you know why? I met you.
I was going to ask you. I was going to say, you and I have a connection that's a bit deeper than just this chat. So, do you want to cover that?
We do indeed, Pete. You and Ron
Mitchell
were the crew.
Yeah.
And you did a fantastic job. And now I can tell you, you held that bloody chopper dead still while I was trying to get onto that ball. And it could have been going all over the shop. You did a marvelous job.
Thank you.
It was just brilliant. Anyway, that's when I first met you.
So do you think that was, not do you think, there was an entire coincidence that chopper happened to be right where you ejected?
It was, and you can tell that story. It
Well,
was amazing. Your story is just as amazing. You were out on your checkout ride, actually.
Yeah, I was on a checkout ride after Christmas.
Yeah, and you just happened to be in the area and got the Mayday call and steamed up the valleys. And luckily, you took the right valley, not the wrong one.
Well, the weather was setting in, Colin. The cloud base was getting lower and the rain was getting heavier. And we thought we had 5 minutes to find you, or around about that. And we hit a fork and went up. And luckily, we went up the right fork.
And it was the right one.
Luckily, and there was your chute, and we had a big in the chopper. Yeah.
No, it was fabulous. That was the best part of my day, and it worked beautifully. No, it was fantastic, Pete.
So the two things that came to fruition was, I was with a check captain I was the commanding officer, and I was with a check captain, and I hadn't yet re-qualified. So before he went down the back to winch you up, I had to say, "Hey, Ron, did I pass my annual check?" He said, yes, boss, you're qualified. So when he got towards the back, he said, "Oh, there's a flying order that says you can't winch somebody up when the left-hand seat's not occupied because it gets too far out of balance, out of center of gravity." He said, "But the commanding officer can authorize that." I said, "Well, here I am, Ron."
Funny about that. I'm on the spot.
We would have got, even if I hadn't been there, we would have got you anyway. There was no way in the world.
But obviously didn't make any difference because you held that thing so still.
Yeah, no, it was a rather monumental moment for all of us, including us in the cockpit.
No, it was brilliant, and we were lucky. And we had a very interesting day, both of us. But if you hadn't have picked me up, if you had gone up the wrong way, you might not have got to me. And I certainly did seize up a bit in hospital for the next couple of days, and they might not have found me for quite some time. So who knows?
Yeah, you're in a pretty remote, uncharted area. I'd say that's what.
Yeah, it was. It was about 12 kilometres south of Braidwood, out near a little mining timber mill place, Monga.
And the funny part out, just to include, I want to ask a few other questions, but the funny part about it is we ended up staying in Nara for the night, and we went, because the mess was already shut, we went to town to have a meal, and this bloke saw us there and said, "What are you guys doing?" He said, "Oh, we just rescued somebody out of the bush." He said, "What was his name?" I said, "Oh, Colin Tomlinson." And he said, "He's my mate." I said, "Well, good. Can you book this meal up to him?"
And he did.
He had a sense of humour, and I got a message from you 2 days later saying, pleasure to buy you a meal.
No, it was fantastic.
So, did they ever find during the court of inquiry or the inquiry, what they had any suspicion about what happened to the aircraft? Or
they did, Pete. They dug it out of a 40-foot hole. They reckon it went in straight in at about Mach 1.2 or something like that. It screamed down. It buried itself in a 40-foot hole. They dug it all out. In fact, the ejection seat triangle, can you see that? On the side of the aeroplane.
Good one.
The warning one. They put on a plaque for me, and there you go. That's part of the aeroplane. They pieced it all together, and found that the Pratt & Whitney engine had 7 bearings. The 6th one failed.
Wow.
And it beat itself to death, threw the turbine blades out the side, and it was on fire within a minute.
So. Now, when you said before that you needed to be timely with your ejection, so when you realised you had to eject, you couldn't muck around because you don't do that.
Yep.
So if you're talking to pilots who now sit in jets with ejection seats, have you got any reflections that you might say to them about, well, not that they are anticipating an ejection, it's possible, but everybody hopes that you don't have to do one. But what would you say to these pilots who are flying around every day sitting in an ejection seat about actually using the ejection seat?
The final decision. Well, a little bit different nowadays because the seats are far better.
Yeah.
And they can get you out of all sorts of situations, upside down and so forth. We had none of that.
No.
Pretty rudimentary old seat. And I had probably 5 to 10 seconds to actually think about it's an ejection situation. It was on fire. I could smell the smoke in the lock system. So it all happened pretty quickly then. But if you do have any time, if there's something as simple as running the electric seat up under my legs, so my legs were flush, so it wouldn't snap off at my knees, do it. If you've got any sort of time, anything particular to that aeroplane or that ejection seat, if you can do it to make it easier for the rest of your life, because I've suffered, try and do it.
Good one, mate. I love the story. Maybe I just participated in it at the end, but I didn't have any idea of what you'd been through to get to the stage where we found you on the ground. That was the easy part.
Yeah.
The hard part was on you, and I congratulate you on the presence of mind you had during that event. I think that was particularly admirable.
Thanks, Peter.
I'm glad you're still sitting there giving me cheek and carrying on with
me. Well, I have had injuries, and I've had double fusion on my spine and that sort of thing. And it is jolly painful, but I'm sitting. I had a flying career for 50 years, 23,000 hours of flying, fighters, and I instructed on Caribou for a short time, just before I joined Qantas. So I've been very fortunate, very lucky.
So I've got to tell everybody you're a Navy pilot, and then you had the
I was a real pilot.
Yeah, you're right. You had the bright idea. You better join the Air Force. They had more aeroplanes. So you had the privilege of being in the Navy and in the Air Force.
Yeah, well, when they had thoughts of getting rid of our carrier,
Yeah.
And get rid of the aeroplanes to the Kiwis, I went over and flew Mirages for a while, but my back was too bad, so I got out of that and instructed, because I was a QFI. I instructed over at Pierce after the ejection for 2 years on Mackies. So I was an instructor, so they used me on the Caribou for a couple of years, and then I got out and joined Qantas.
Just before I wind up, I always give the last say to the person I'm chatting to. Is there any other thing you want to add in that maybe we didn't, that you've still in your head that you might want to talk about?
No, not really, Pete. Just thanks again for you being in the right spot at the right time.
Got lucky, eh?
It was very, very fortunate.
Good on you.
Because I don't think you had a lot of fuel either to hang around. So.
No, we didn't have a lot of fuel. No, we didn't. We're getting near the end of our sortie.
Yep.
But we were just out there by total coincidence as well, and we heard you on Leader Call a Mayday, and we looked on our map, and I said to Ron Mitchell, I said, "Holy mackerel, he's right over the top of us." And we knew then if we just waited, we'd hear you, Sabi, and maybe we'd.
You were probably worried I wasn't going to come down and ruin your day going.
I was worried about you. You ended up being mincemeat and a bloody rotor blade.
Yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen.
Thanks, Cole.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks again for saving me.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this chat, could you please subscribe to our channel? It would help us a lot. Also, could you have a look in the description of this particular video and look for Australian Military Aviation Historical Association or Air Force Association New South Wales or Wings Magazine. All these organisations you can either subscribe or register with if it takes your interest. And they are all organisations that support veterans, all run by volunteers, and all are not for profits. Thanks.